All right, so hello. Good morning. It's nice to be here again. So again, my name is Kai Davis, master's student here at UK. So this is my last time doing this officially. So I'm doing wildlife sounds. I talk about birds every time, and I do a color theme each time. So the color theme for this one going to be yellow. So the two birds we'll talk about, one being a local bird that we'll talk about first, the second being a migratory bird that'll show up around this time of year in this season and month will also be yellow. So I'll play the sounds for you all. If you feel like you know it or you want to guess, feel free to put it in the chat. I love to hear some of the guesses, and same with questions. I might not see it, but I'll try to answer it afterwards. And then preface, I'm still learning with you all too, so I might not know all the answers, but it's fun trying to explore with you all. So anyway, let's go ahead and dive into the first bird. All right, so this is typically the habitat that you'll find them in locally, but pretty much all around for the most part. So it's kind of a hint too, so I'll go ahead and play the sound. All right, I'll play it one more time. All right, so yeah, if you have any guesses, feel free to put it in. One more. Okay, so it is the American goldfinch. So hopefully you all got it right or suspected it. So this is only a small part of all the different calls and sounds and songs that the goldfinch has, but it's the most recognizable. So the way that I recognize it, so there's two ways. One is it's like a bright perchicory you might hear, but the one that I've been taught and the one that I mostly recognize is potato chip, potato chip. And of course, that's a lot more fun. So it can be like a chip, chip, potato chip. But like I said, it can be only a small part of all that the goldfinch will call and sing. So yeah, so that's again, I'll play it for you one more time to see if you recognize that potato chip and that perchicory. So yeah, here we go. Yeah, so that's the American goldfinch. So let's learn some more about the goldfinch. So within their life history and behavior, so they're active acrobatic flyers. They're known to undulate. So that's that flying pattern where they kind of like bounce around and flap and bounce around like that. And typically they'll call that potato chip call while they're undulating like that. They're known to balance on seed heads of thistles and dandelions and other plants to pluck seeds. They don't typically join other songbirds in forest fights. So if there's a predator around and there's a lot of songbirds attacking that predator and protecting their area, songbirds are going to sit off to the side and watch it go on. They're not going to be joining that fight. In terms of their diet, they eat mostly and almost exclusively seeds. So they're among the strictest vegetarians in the bird world. They select an entirely vegetable diet. They'll inadvertently swallow insects from time to time if it's just on the seed, but that's pretty much it in terms of eating anything but seeds. So main types of seeds will be sunflowers and thistle. There are grasses, alder and birch from trees and things like that. So in terms of their habitat and location, they're known to be in weedy fields, open woods, floodplains, and other overgrown areas. But like I said, they're pretty much common here. So you can find them in suburbs, parks, orchard, roadsides, backyards, wherever. And I showed the habitat before, like I said. And then they are known to be found here year round, like it shows in the map. Obviously, we're in this area, but in some of the other areas in North and South US, they might not be there so year round. So they are slightly migratory, but not in our region. So in terms of their conservation and threats, again, reiterating the fact that they are very common, but their numbers have decreased an estimated amount of 0.6% per year between 1966 and 2019. So that's a cumulative decline of 27%. The estimated global breeding population is 44 million, so it's a species of low conservation concern. Their main threats are going to be wildfires, heat waves, and flooding. So some fun facts with this cool little bird. They're the state bird for New Jersey, Iowa, and Washington. So different ends of the US, which is kind of cool. Um, and then another thing which is really cool about them specifically is that I may have talked a couple times about brown-headed cowbird parasitism in terms of other birds' threats for their conservation. So brown-headed cowbirds will come in and lay eggs in other birds' nests and then have those birds um, nurse and bring up their young. And then that bird takes over that nest because they require a lot more than some of the other birds or the other birds that are being in that nest with those nestlings. But for this bird in particular, the brown-headed cowbirds that are nestlings in those nests typically don't survive more than 3 days because these American goldfinch are such strict vegetarians, and the brown-headed cowbird can't survive on that diet. So as much as I wouldn't want to see a bird suffer, it is nice to see that American goldfinch has a strategy against this parasitism, and they aren't so threatened by this. So that's kind of nice for this particular bird. And then also, lastly, their nests are so well made that they may even hold water, which is pretty impressive for building a nest. So up next, the migratory bird. So I'll go ahead and play it for you. All right. And again, if you have a guess, feel free to put it in the chat. All right, so the big reveal. Kentucky warbler. I had to show some for our state. So the Kentucky warbler. So the sound that it has is that resonant, rolling, upslurred chiree, 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 and it usually calls about 8 times. And then also I can hear like a pretty, 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 pretty. So either one you want to use, but that's pretty much recognizable. However, the Carolina Wren is very similar. Its song is very similar in cadence, but it's burrier, and each note typically has 2 syllables for the Kentucky warbler, as opposed to the Carolina Wren, which has 3 syllables. However, the cardinal is also very, very similar, but it's typically it's just slightly different in terms of what the sounds it makes, but similar cadence again. But yeah, so I'll go ahead and play it for you again. So that pretty, 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 and that chiree, 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 so about 8 times. So go ahead and play that. Yeah, so whichever one you hear, it's kind of like that dress that's blue or gold, depending on what you see. So for here, just whatever you hear between those two. So let's learn some more about the Kentucky warbler. So in terms of its life history and behavior, so males typically arrive on breeding grounds before the females do, and they'll sing and establish territory and defend from rivals with threat displays, and that's raising the crown, chipping, and then they'll chase as well. And then so during pair bonding, when they're feeling each other around and trying to find mates, as many as 5 males and females will chase each other around at the territory. And this activity will attract others. So there will be a large party of Kentucky warblers just chasing each other around, trying to find mates. Once they are paired, they are socially monogamous. However, about half of the nests usually contain an extra pair fertilization nestling. So they get around a little bit. So males will guard females during incubation. However, after the young fledge, the parents usually go their separate ways. And they're usually found in the understory as opposed to anywhere else in the forest or in the trees. So very much lower on the ground, lower in the forest. So for their diet, they eat insects and their larvae, but they don't discriminate against spiders. They also eat arachnids, but they also eat fruit as well. So when foraging, they spend most of their time hopping around on the forest floor. Like I said, very much an understory bird. They'll turn over leaf litter, scratch with their feet. They'll probe with their bill to find prey. They also feed in the understory again. The lower parts of the trees, they'll glean insects and occasionally grab insects from the underside of leaves too. So in terms of their habitat, like I showed before, they'll use lowland hardwood forests, often near streams and dense understory. May apple, white avon, spice bush, and other understory plants are associated with their nesting. They need large tracts of forest habitat, over 1,200 acres, for nesting, although gaps such as tree fall gaps, small roads are important for a patchwork of shaded and well-lit areas that they like to be found in. So in terms of their location and migration, as you can see in the picture, we are where they breed. Their breeding ground for the summertime, spring and summertime. So they're medium to long distance migrant. They migrate mostly at night, and many will fly across the Gulf of Mexico in the spring and in the fall. So they'll often depart the breeding ground. So often depart where we are now during August. So if you want to go out and look for them, they'll be here till August. So get them while you can. In terms of their conservation and threats, their population has declined an estimated amount of 0.69 per year between 1966 and 2019. Estimates a global breeding population of 2.6 million. So it's a yellow on the watch list for species with declining population. So it is declining. Their threats, there are a couple of them. So these Kentucky warblers will avoid forests without understory. So this can include like stands and forests that have been overbrowsed by deer. So deer can actually have an effect on the conservation of this species, but also managed and even age stands of timber they'll also avoid. And then like most songbirds, they migrate nocturnally, so at night. So they'll often strike buildings and other structures and are killed, unfortunately. Also, feral and domestic cats probably kill a lot of Kentucky warblers year round. These species, again, forage close to the ground where most of these cats might hunt. So keep your cats indoors if you can. That would be amazing. Are some of the threats. And then lastly, in terms of the fun facts, you might be wondering why this is named the Kentucky warbler. So the pioneering Scottish naturalist Alexander Wilson was in Kentucky when he first collected this species in 1811, and then the name stuck from there. So this became the Kentucky warbler, which is kind of cool.